Welcome back to another episode. I'm your host, Ryan Richards, a residential loan officer and real estate investor based in Massachusetts and Rhode Island. Today, I brought back the first repeat guest, Brooke Buckett, onto the podcast, who is a top real estate agent in Rhode Island, to talk about the state of the market, what we're seeing as far as trends, are there opportunities, and what have all the recent developments meant for the real estate market. So this episode would be filmed in November, which was just a week after the election, a few weeks after the Fed's first rate cut, and a few months after the NAR settlement. So we had some big headlines come out in the real estate industry, and Brooke and I dive into what is really going on in the real estate market today. What should buyers be thinking about? And how do you best navigate this time through all the headlines to figure out what's really happening? So stay tuned to learn about this and much more. Brooke, well, thank you for being here again. Looking forward to having you back on the show and just talking some more about real estate.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here. So thanks for having me, Ryan.
Yeah, of course. And I know, we're filming this in like the middle of November, and I think we've noticed some just different trends taking shape within the market. And I know you have your finger on the pulse in the Rhode Island market and surrounding Massachusetts markets as well. And I want to talk a little bit about what we're seeing, because I've noticed a few trends that have piqued my interest that I've started to pay more attention to, especially with just the typical, winter cycles that we see in real estate. And one thing I wanted to talk about initially is what you're seeing on the competition side, because typically, in winter cycles, we do see, some reduction in buyer activity, some reduction in listings on the market. So it's pretty typical.
Right.
But I've noticed it hit all at once this year. I've noticed that at least in terms of the contracts I'm seeing, the offers getting accepted, it seems like buyers are winning more.
Yeah.
So talk a little bit about what you're seeing from the buyer side of things in the market today.
Absolutely. So in chatting with my buyers recently, I've been talking about the awesome opportunities that have been available. And definitely these are opportunities that we tend to see in the winter market, right? Because there's less competition. So buyers are able to get better terms typically during this season. However, like you said, there's definitely, a sizable amount of advantages in like the current market that I haven't seen in past winter markets. So what does that look like? Well, 80% of my clients that have closed in the past month have received seller credits, which is just phenomenal. That's not something that I've seen in the past. Additionally, quite a few clients have also been able to procure properties under asking price. Or if there are multiple offers, they're still getting the property like right at asking or slightly above asking. So that's amazing. And then in terms of like home inspections, a lot of buyers still to this day have it in their minds that it's still 2020. They're going to have to waive a home inspection. That's simply not the case. So that's the good news. In the last year or so, things have definitely eased up. And, all of my buyers in the last year have been able to conduct home inspections. Let's knock on every piece of wood. But with that said,
Except for me.
Well, that was you choosing to do so. No. So with that said, though, home inspections are just becoming part of the norm now. And I'm having ease of getting offers accepted with full home inspections.
That's awesome.
Right. So yeah, just really great offer terms. And a lot of my buyers too have been able to get their first offer accepted or maybe their second offer accepted. If we look back a year ago, it was taking 3, 4, 5 offers, so definitely much more ease in getting your offer accepted as well.
Yeah, I agree. And that's, I think, what I've seen too. And it's funny when we say like we still talk about like COVID, but it's true in the sense that like for the last year and a half, or year or so, we've been saying the market's not like COVID anymore. It's not as competitive. But I feel like in this winter market, like I feel it more than ever.
Absolutely.
That there is that softening of competition.
Right.
Not to say that there isn't still competition, but that buyers are able to get some more advantageous terms. Seller credits with a good agent are becoming a common theme.
Right.
And then getting some built-in equity. A lot of the properties that I'm seeing come back on the appraisal side of things, there is a good equity cushion.
Right.
In most cases, obviously you have to buy at the right price, but we're seeing some more deals happen on the buy side, which I think is just a good thing for the market.
Definitely.
We've had a lot of competition for a while, which is great, in terms of keeping home prices where they are or continuing to see, some appreciation. But it's much more natural to have, like a 2-week turn time on a listing and have, a couple offers on a listing. But I know certainly there still are situations that when homes are priced right, and they're in the right areas, that competition can be much more than that. So talk about what you're seeing from like the competition side of things. And are there still anomalies that get 5, 10, 12, 15 offers? Is that still something that happens?
So great question. So I want to go back to something that you said first before I answer this question, just about the importance right now of utilizing agents that are full-time agents that are working with buyers day in and day out and really have a pulse on the market, right? Because I'm having really great luck with crafting these offers for my clients that are getting amazing terms, right? So like credits, great pricing, but I'm doing this day in and day out. So I'm seeing those offers get accepted. And I found that when I'm on the list side and I'm getting offers from agents that maybe are not full-time or part-time and don't know exactly what's happening in the market, they're really still throwing these really strong offers, which is incredible for my sellers, of course, right? But nevertheless, they probably could have got the offer accepted for their clients with better terms. So that's very important. Now, most of my clients are getting their first or second offer accepted because there's less competition. So I'm noticing a lot of listings that I've been submitting offers on, they're maybe only receiving 1 to 3 offers. So it's still competitive. And I always tell my clients, we need to put your best foot forward. But my whole job is to make sure that I'm representing your best interest and getting you the best deal possible, right? So it's always towing that fine line.
I think that's so important to understand too, because I think like the idea of an offer getting accepted, right? It's obviously just 2 parties agreeing upon terms.
Right.
So if you had a cash buyer, in theory, you could get any offer accepted that you want. If you propose the highest price, you proposed no contingencies, and you agree upon all the seller's timelines and contingencies, then in theory, you could get any offer accepted. But what you said, I think, is super important because it's not always about getting every offer accepted when you're representing the buyer. Right. Because you want to have the offer accepted to the best outcome for the buyer. Absolutely. So that means protecting them with contingencies. That means getting the property at a good price.
Right.
And giving them the ability to protect, their deposit. So I think that's like a super important delineation to make when it comes to getting offers accepted, because when you talk about it now, I know that you're coming from the standpoint of you're getting really good offers accepted for your buyers.
Right.
Versus just getting offers accepted. There's 2 different things.
Absolutely. I love that. And that was very well put. And it's really important too, the agent that you work with, how they go about presenting your offer to the listing agent as well, the interest that you show, following up. Really, communication and relationships in real estate are everything. So again, when you're working with a full-time agent that's known in a local market, it's a trusted agent. Other agents have had good experiences with that agent and their buyers, and transactions go well with those, other agents. It can make your offer stand out. And your lender is also a huge part of that, right? Picking up the phone. I know when we do deals together, we always make sure that you pick up the phone, you call that listing agent, you assure them that you've gone through all the documentation needed, and you're confident in that pre-approval that you're giving out. And that also goes a long way, right? If I'm on the list side and I just get a random pre-approval, I'm always calling the lender. But I prefer that the lender calls me and gives me that assurity, right? Because that stands out, certainly. And it already shows me that that lender is a step ahead and their service level is much greater than your average lender, which is so important. But I want to switch to the anomaly question. You asked so many good questions. So I want to make sure this one doesn't go past because it's important to note this. So although I've been seeing that buyers are having much more ease in terms of getting their offers accepted, right? And it's typically 1 or 2 offers, and there's usually 1 to 3 offers on the table. There are those anomaly homes. So I know recently I had a listing and I'm really great at, strategizing with my seller in terms of pricing a property accurately. And that's very important in today's market, marketing it well and making sure that their home is show ready so that when buyers come through, they're dazzled with this home, right? Like that's very important. But homes overall that are priced well, marketed well, and presented well to show to buyers, I have seen that those homes tend to garner more offers and get more competitive terms and an even higher price, right? So that's really important if you are a seller to make sure that you're working with an experienced listing agent that's going to position your home in the best light, help you price properly to get the most amount of buyers through that door and get you the max, top dollar for your home. Truly very important.
Absolutely. And it's funny too, where it's almost like I sometimes scratch my head when you don't have someone who does all the things that you do, for a listing to make the property as welcoming and, desirable as possible. But when they are priced right, you definitely, see the competition, which from your standpoint as the buyer's agent, like if you're not a full-time or dedicated agent, you might not recognize those types of situations.
Right.
And being able to coach your buyer on how this offer is different than the offer we made on the other house that maybe wasn't marketed as well and maybe was overpriced.
Right.
So having that perspective on pricing and competition scope, I think is super important from the buy side too.
Absolutely agree with that. Yeah.
On the theme of, anomalies, and I guess just kind of going back to our COVID discussion where things in the moment in real estate, I feel like get very blown up. And so what I mean by that is, you see COVID as an example. The real estate market is out of control and you'll see headlines about recession fears, about price fears. But in reality, in the end, real estate still functions off the same set of principles. So another one of these examples I look at is like the NAR settlement.
Okay.
And I know we've talked a little bit about this and I've had this conversation a lot, but when that headline came out, like the real estate market, there was a lot of commotion.
Right.
And people were like, this is going to change our business. We don't know if the market's going to function the same. This is going to affect everyone. But just like COVID, those factors don't change the fundamentals of the real estate market.
Right.
People need places to live. People need to move from their houses for certain reasons. So supply comes on the market. People want to live in their own place. They want to have their own space. And it's ultimately a function of supply and demand based on a tangible asset. It's a house. It's not cryptocurrency, which can change prices if Elon Musk tweets something. So the fundamentals are always there. And with the NAR settlement, curious on your take too, but I feel like what I've seen is that generally the market's still functioning the same.
Right.
The only material change that we really saw was another line item on an offer form that just makes sure everyone knows who's paying the commission.
Exactly.
And in the end, it's still in the seller's best interest to pay buyer's agent's commission.
Absolutely. And it expands their buyer pool, right? Because there's a lot of buyers that are already taking on paying the down payment, the closing costs, other transactional fees when they're purchasing a home. And then you add the buyer's agent fee on there. And if the seller wasn't able to pay out any sort of a buyer's agent commission, then perhaps their buyer pool will shrink, right? Because that buyer doesn't have enough funds to then pay their buyer's agent to represent them in that sale as well. So in what you said, I think overall, anytime we look at anything media related with real estate, like a lot of other things with the media, everything always gets blown out of proportion. And it's so important, rather than listening to the national news of what's happening, to defer to a local expert, meaning a top local agent in your market, to ask what's really happening and how this impacts. And, ultimately will play out with you as a buyer or a seller. It's really important because, if you haven't bought a home before, or if you've never sold a home before, maybe you have, but it's been many, many years, you probably don't even realize how the system was functioning before. So then to all of a sudden have all this information just dumped on you, again, from, news reporters that also are not in the real estate space trying to articulate how this all functions now. I just don't think it's the best way to get that information and to understand what's truly happening. And, the way that it was presented really, it seemed like doomsday. And a lot of people were coming to be like, oh my gosh, how are we going to buy a house now? And it's business as usual. Here we are. I'm still standing, smiling. My buyers and sellers are still standing, smiling. It is business as usual. And like you said, it's truly just another line item, one other form we need to fill out. On all of my offers that I've had accepted since the NAR settlement, seller has been willing to pay out a buyer's agent commission. That's incredible. Sellers realize the importance of paying towards that buyer's agent fee. Like I said, it expands their buyer pool, and they're still getting great offers. So that's just another piece of the offer that should be negotiated. It's very easy to take care of as long as you're working with someone that can articulate it to you, in the proper way.
Yeah, 100%. And I was thinking that the other day. I was looking back, and out of the 100 or so transactions, we've done on the mortgage side this year, maybe 50 after the settlement.
Yeah.
Maybe 2 or 3 had a portion of the buyer's agent fee paid by the buyer. But it's in select scenarios, and that's ultimately a negotiation point, just like anything else.
Absolutely.
But I think you're right. If you have the right person to articulate, the value, and I think that comes too from being a really good professional. Like if you're very good at your job, you provide value, then your commission is warrantable. So
right.
The idea that it would have been anything else or looked at any differently, I still don't, I guess, understand where all the commotion came from in the moment. But obviously it was a big change. The real estate industry doesn't like change. So
no industry likes big change, but it ultimately, I haven't found that it's as big of a change as it was made out to be. It's actually been very easy to navigate. I've had my buyers had their offers accepted where my fee's been paid by the seller 100% of the time since this has happened with very much ease. Like there's been no pushback. It's just business as usual in our local market. Now, that might not be applicable to all markets, so you need to talk to someone in your local area to see how things are working out, right? This is
markets.
why national media doesn't do the best in articulating these sorts of things. So I defer to a local expert if you are in another market. I think that's really important. But buyers' representation is everything. You need to remember that when you go to a listing, that other agent that's there is representing the seller and the seller's best interests and working to get the seller top dollar and make the most amount of money and get the best terms for the seller. So it's like going to court without your own attorney, right? Like, do you show up at court where the other side has an attorney and you don't have an attorney? Hopefully not, if you can help it, because it's not going to end well, right? And you're not going to get the best, terms from that. And it's the same thing in real estate, right? If the seller has an agent, it is in your best interest for you to also have an agent, because you want someone that's doing this day in and day out, knows how to navigate different deals, knows how to negotiate on your behalf properly, knows the real estate laws. That's really big, right? And how the process functions. And ultimately, I find time and time and again, and I'm really blessed to be able to do this, that I can negotiate and, save my clients thousands of dollars and help them understand like inspection items that also could save them, thousands of dollars. They might think it's no big deal. And then I explain to them, oh no, this is the impact of something like this on a home inspection on your home long-term. It'll cost you this much. And they're like, oh my gosh, thank goodness you brought this up, because, if you're working with a first-time home buyer, they don't even know truly what to look out for, right? So it's really important to have representation and, chatting with a buyer's agent to see how you can make that possible for yourself.
Absolutely. And especially a buyer's agent who understands like how to work in your client's best interest. Not to say that all agents don't do that. That's not the case. But like specific to their scenario. Mm-hmm. So what I mean by that is like for your example with the seller credit, having an agent on your team who understands like the value of that based on your situation. If you're a first-time home buyer, doesn't have a lot of funds, right, those seller credits go a long way.
Absolutely.
So rather than renegotiating the price over $5,000, mm-hmm, does $5,000 really matter over 10 years of owning your home?
Payment? No.
It's $30 a month in payment. So a lot of times, like especially working with you, I always see that you find a way to get your buyers like the best terms for them,
right? Which
is super important, to be able to have that advocate for you that can not only advise you on what types of things you should probably look for in your offer and what types of terms you should put in there, mm-hmm, to get them the most advantageous outcome, but also, be competitive and get them the house. Absolutely. So it's a balancing act between the two.
Always is. Yes. And, a lot of it comes with getting to know your client. I always take time to sit down and have, at least an hour-long buyer consultation. I want to learn about you. I need to know about what you're hopeful to achieve in the process, understand your finances, understand your living situation, so that I can get you those best terms and help you negotiate an offer that's within your best interest, right? So that's really important. And I always take the time to do that with my client. Additionally, every time we put an offer in, it's a half hour to an hour we're on that phone call. And I'm going through all your options with you, ensuring that we meet your best needs and you're able to also put your best foot forward to give you the best shot at that house, right? So it's really important that you're partnering with someone that's really in your corner and ready to go to bat for you. And that's what makes me excited. I love winning for my clients and helping them achieve their best outcome.
Yeah, that's how it should be. That's how people should look at it.
I know you're the same way, so you get it.
I am. Yeah, it's that's what we do, is making sure people get the best possible outcome for, their specific situation. Everyone's situation is different. But I feel like, with that being said, like a lot of what we're talking about now is basically around the idea that the market's still functioning healthy, mm-hmm, which might not be for someone who doesn't have like their finger on the pulse of the actual real estate market and they just read the headlines. They might not think that that's the case.
Right.
So I personally feel like, with the right agent right now, mm-hmm, with the right search criteria, the right offer structure, and the right mindset, like there are really good deals to be had.
There certainly are. This market has me excited. I'm excited again. I mean, the first couple of years after COVID was really hard. It was emotional. And, obviously I'm the professional, so I put my emotions to the side, but it was hard to watch my buyers submit offers, really competitive, great offers, and get turned down, right? Like that was the first couple of years after COVID because interest rates were just so low and there were just so many buyers. It was so saturated, low inventory, and it just was really hard. And it took people a lot longer to get an offer accepted, but it was super sweet, obviously, when they won. But now, I mean, to get that first or second offer accepted on a home they really love, people don't feel like they're just settling anymore. Like they can take the time. It's not as competitive. They don't feel like they have to give the t-shirt off their back to make it happen. I'm excited again. And the deals that my clients are getting, I love that I can negotiate credits again and they're getting full home inspections. Like my buyers feel really good. And I'm seeing that, right?
You get to use all the tools in the toolbox.
Yes. And it's incredible. And so I want to scream it from the rooftops. Like if you've been sitting to the side and you're ready to buy, like say you want to buy a home and you've been sitting to the sidelines just waiting for better conditions, the conditions are here. I mean, right now, because of the winter market, we already see less buyer competition in the market. Interest rates are slightly elevated. Again, this is taking place in November. So let's see what happens when this episode does air here. But nevertheless, slightly elevated, which for some buyers, they decide to step outside, or for affordability reasons, they step outside. But if you can afford to buy right now, I mean, you should step in the market and take advantage of the fact that there's lesser buyer competition. Prices right now are also, like I said, you're able to get an offer accepted slightly under asking or slightly above, but nothing crazy. And yeah, you take the slightly elevated interest rate in hopes that when interest rates come down in the next year, 2 years, you can refinance at that time, but you procured a home at a lower purchase price rather than waiting for interest rates to go down. Prices go up naturally. And then, yeah, okay, great. You got a lower interest rate, but you're buying at a much higher price. And so the monthly payments are probably almost comparable. And you have more of an equity play when you buy at a lower value. So I'm all about the market right now. I think it's a great market. I'm excited about it.
No, I agree. And I think sometimes when people hear real estate professionals talk about it's a good time to buy, it's a good time to buy, like they might not believe us necessarily because obviously, it's within our best interest for people to buy. But from our perspective, I know you especially too, like we're buying properties actively right now. And I'm very bullish on the market. And a lot of the investors that I work with are in the position where they're taking out equity from their properties they've acquired because they foresee opportunity. Right. So tracking the investor money is also another signal that today's market has a lot of opportunity. You look at Warren Buffett, Berkshire Hathaway is in the most advantageous cash position they've been in by multiples because they liquidated to prepare for opportunity. And it's the same thing that real estate investors are doing right now. And I know from your standpoint, you, of course, believe in the real estate market today from the standpoint of helping people take advantage of it, but you're also an active investor, active buyer.
Exactly.
Which I think is also a good thing to have in an agent, someone, especially in the investment side, if you're buying multifamily, you want someone who's actually actively in the multifamily space, who's an active participant.
Right.
Because they'll have a good gauge on some of those other, criteria that really drive the market.
Truly. Yes. And I think when it comes down to two, right? Like when is the best time for someone to buy? And I'm sure you'd agree with me. There's never a best time to buy, right? Because it's all about your unique circumstances and when it's best for you. And a lot of times you and I know in past conversations have talked about the importance of affordability. Affordability is everything. Like if you want to buy a house now, I'm a true believer that prices are going to continue to rise for at least the next few years, just given like data, the low amount of inventory that we have here. So I'm all in on the market. I think it's a great market to buy. I think there's a lot of equity to be had. So then with that said, if you want to buy a house, can you afford to buy a house right now at whatever the given interest rate is? Don't try to time the market. It's really usually unfruitful, right? Do you find that with buyers?
That's the biggest thing is people feel like they need to buy at like the best possible time. And the reality is that there is no best perfect time. It's really when you're ready and you can afford the payments and you're ready for that lifestyle shift.
Exactly.
But my best example I give is I equate it to the stock market. People always ask me when they go under contract, should I lock my rate today? It's the same type of question as should I buy today?
Right.
Well, you're not buying based on today. I mean, obviously, yes, you want a good entry price, whether you're buying a stock, real estate, or any asset. But what's the hold period? Like, why are you buying this? If you're shorting a stock or if you're making a short-term investment in real estate, flipping a house, for example, then yes, close market trends matter more because it's shorter term.
Of course.
But if you're buying a house to live in for 3 to 5 to 10 years, it's the same thing I equate to as buying Apple. If I was going to invest in Apple today, which I do own Apple, I'm not looking necessarily at Apple's stock price today. Yes, I generally will look quick read to see if I think it's a well-valued stock price on the day, but you can't really worry about the day to day. At the end of the day, I'm like, you have to step back and say, will this be worth in 5 to 10 years?
Right.
Because this is a long-term investment. I'm not buying Apple today to make money in January. I'm buying Apple to make money when I'm 50.
Absolutely.
And it's the same type of thing when it comes to housing. Like the market will fluctuate. That's the essential fundamentals
like
of what
any other market, right?
anything trades at.
Yep.
So I think when people get too narrowed in on the minute details, it ends up becoming analysis by paralysis. Like you're trying to predict market movements in the short term that economists who are world-renowned, highly educated people spend their entire life trying to do and get wrong.
Right.
It's just like the weathermen, not to put them in the mix, but it's the same thing.
It's so true.
Their whole life they spend trying to predict things. And the ultimate fallback is predictions are only partially accurate. I mean, they're not always 100% right. So at the end of the day, I think for people, taking that step back and just zooming out, looking at your overall plan. And if it's a longer term plan, then don't worry about the day-to-day stuff.
Right.
But worry about your situation. Are you ready to make the move? Are you ready to invest in real estate?
Right.
Are you in a cash position to do so? How's your finances?
Right.
Do you want to move into that house and have your own space?
Yeah.
Are you ready to take care of your own yard? Those types of questions I think are more important than what's the interest rate or where is the market going to be in 30 days? Like those are too difficult to predict.
I agree. And I love what you just said, because I think a lot of that boils down to sitting with yourself and, really mapping out a plan, like doing out your budget, understanding your finances, understanding, what your goals are in the next 3 to 5 years. Like, are you going to set roots in a certain area, and hold on to that house for 2 to 5 years, right? That's really important. And additionally, blocking out the noise. And what I mean by that is friends, family, they're so important. And we love mom and dad and we love, our friends, but it's your home buying experience, right? And you're the one buying. So blocking that out, because when mom and dad bought in 1982, things were much different and the market does not operate like that. And your friend that bought 2 years ago that had to waive her home inspection and pay $100,000 over asking, that is not the now. So it's very important that you chat with, again, a local expert that can give you the data now. And then you take that data and you decide if it makes sense for you, right? That's so very important.
Yeah. I think it's so funny, that topic when it comes to real estate, so many people have input, but so many people are not by any means experts.
Right.
So I always laugh at that conversation when someone's like, oh, well, my aunt said this. My question is then, how many houses has your aunt purchased in the last 2 years?
Right.
Oh, well, they bought in 2015, so they haven't really bought anything in a while. Oh, are they in the finance field? No, they're a nurse. They're not really in finance. So shouldn't you qualify who you get your advice from?
Right.
If I went to my car dealership and asked him what's wrong with my knee, and he goes, well, actually, one time a few years ago, I had a knee problem. It's my ACL. You should probably go get ACL surgery. And you just go and do that. But when it comes to real estate, people just assume they don't qualify the opinion and where it's coming from.
Absolutely.
So I think it's super important you find a professional who has their pulse on the market and then make your own determination.
That's it.
You don't have to take our advice or our thoughts.
Right.
But at least get all the information.
Right. So very
before
important.
You make a move that's as big as, I would say, surgery. Obviously, your health is most important, but you're buying a house. You're several $100,000 asset.
Might be your biggest purchase ever, right?
And you're going to listen to your aunt at a cookout on whether or not you should do that. If you put it in that term, I think the idea that you don't qualify where your advice comes from is definitely alarming to me. I mean, I definitely try to do that, especially in today's day and age.
Right.
So many things you see online have no bearing of truth. But most people read the first few sentences and they don't actually tie it back to, okay, well, what's the source?
Right.
Or what data are they tying it to? And in most cases, it doesn't go to anything, or the data is misrepresented by the headline.
Right.
So I think it's the same type of thing when you're talking about real estate. Go to a professional, talk to a realtor like yourself, get their opinion on the market. And good professionals will give you both sides. They'll give you the full picture.
Of course.
And let you make the decision. But don't just make a decision that big based on someone who might really not be an expert in the field.
Agreed.
So I think that's super important because I hear that all the time. And I think I made my point clear. But overall, I think what we've both determined, and obviously from where we are, as in from an investment standpoint, there is a lot of opportunity right now.
There is.
And people should look to take advantage of it.
And we're chatting about, the now. Obviously, again, this is November. Winter, like we said, holds a lot of opportunity. Come spring, that changes, right? And I'm curious to hear kind of what you think is on the horizon for the next few months. So let's chat like what's in real estate. Spring comes end of February, right? Like spring comes early for us.
It does.
So what do you think the market holds? Like, what do you think the spring will be like?
It's a really good question. I think from the standpoint of mortgage rates, I think mortgage rates, again, like I was talking before with the macro picture, I think that's the only real way we can judge mortgage rates right now because it's too hard to predict the short term.
Yeah.
But over the next 12, 18, 24 months, I do predict I would be surprised if the rates haven't gone down by then. I would expect we see rates in the fives in the next 12, 18, 24 months. Now, I could be wrong, of course, a million different factors can change, but I think you have to look at that type of time horizon. That being said, to pull it back to February, my thought is when you look at the fundamentals of mortgage rates and what influences mortgage rates today, it's all data and sentiment. What do people believe about the market? Which is interesting. Interest rates move on what people believe about the market. Right. So that means that people are making assumptions about the expectations of what people believe. So it's like a convoluted circle.
Yeah.
But in saying that, mortgage rates really move off of data. So in order for rates to continue to come down, my question would be, what do we need to see in the data that would do that?
Yep.
And it would have to be consecutive months of convincing data. What does convincing data look like? Lower inflation numbers, higher unemployment figures. We need to see some softening in the market. And right now, part of the reason rates have bounced back is because we've seen a few reports that actually show the opposite. That, hey, wait a minute, inflation might not be over yet. And people actually aren't losing as many jobs as we thought. So when looking at the fundamentals, I think come February, my expectation is we're probably going to be in a very similar spot. I think rates don't move linear. It's not like you roll a ball down a hill and it goes straight down. Rates tend to follow, like a roller coaster. There's days where they go up, there's days where they go down. And I think we're generally going to bounce around that 7% range with rates.
Okay.
So what that does to the market, I'm not really sure it's going to influence it one way or another in terms of supply and demand.
Yeah. But
I do think at some point people are going to realize what we're saying in that there's opportunity in the market. And if you zoom out and look at the overall picture, the day-to-day stuff doesn't have as much weight. So in saying that, at some point, I think people who have been waiting to buy and are waiting for this giant rate crash to come that might not come, at some point, they're going to say, okay, maybe it's not coming. Let me actually look into buying, look at the details, look at the process, and make a decision. So I think we're going to get some demand from that standpoint of people who were waiting for the election to pass, waiting for the Fed to cut interest rates. The never-ending waiting game, I think at some point is going to stop.
Yeah.
And I don't know if we necessarily need rates to do that. I think at some point it's just going to be a level of frustration with yourself where you say, okay, I'm done. All right, I'm done waiting.
Yeah.
The market's the market. I think that could happen in spring. So maybe some more buyer activity, but definitely some opportunity.
Love that. And it was funny. I actually spoke with a new buyer yesterday who, ultimately I had talked to them a little bit over a year and a half ago, and they were waiting at that time because they thought prices might come down. So they waited it out. And, last night as we're chatting, it's like, I'm done waiting. Like prices are still going up. He's like, I think they're going to continue to go up. He's like, I'm buying now. He's like, I want in on the market. Like I see that they're going up. And the data is supporting that too, right? Like in the Rhode Island market, we saw about a 7.5% to a 9% price appreciation year over year, which is nearly double the national average. A lot of people have seen a lot of price reductions as of late, but that's not necessarily impacting where price appreciation is going. So that's important to note that doesn't always correlate. Even if you are seeing more price reductions, the market is still going up. So I think that's important. And then last spring, like I'm sure you can even attest to this, I had a very, very busy spring with my buyers, and interest rates were roughly, in that 7% ballpark, let's say, last spring. And it was still the normal, busy springtime market. And I'm foreseeing that will likely be the case here again, right? People step aside for the holidays and make it their 2025 goal to get started come spring. And then we see that increase in buyer activity just naturally every spring. So I'm really, looking forward to that. But again, that of course means a little bit more buyer competition you're up against. And right now you don't have that, which is obviously really great to see.
No, I agree. And I think like you said, I think we're past some of those big events. We're past the first rate reduction to 6%. Like we saw that.
Right.
We saw, the election happened. That's over. We saw the first rate cut. That happened. It's over.
Right.
And we're still back to where we are. But what's better is the competition. So
yes.
I agree. I'm super opportunistic right now about the market. Hopefully people out there understand where we're coming from and believe the same thing.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you again for coming on. Awesome conversation. And I look forward to having you on again in the future.
Thanks so much, Ryan. It was great being here.